I want you to picture a 12-year-old boy. He gets scolded every single morning for being late.
Okay.
And his clothes, they're unwashed. They smell so strongly that his classmates actually actively refuse to sit anywhere near him.
Which is just brutal for a kid that age.
It really is. And when the lunch bell rings, the other kids pull out their tiffins to eat and play, but he has absolutely nothing.
Oh, wow. So he's just sitting there while everyone else eats.
Yeah. He just sits completely alone under a tree, burying his face in his schoolwork. But here is the most striking part of the whole thing.
What's that?
When he is mocked by his peers or even reprimanded by his teacher, he doesn't cry. He doesn't yell back. I mean, he doesn't even frown. He takes all of this humiliation in total, unwavering silence.
That's a really intense image to start with.
Right. Well, welcome to our deep dive. Today, we're exploring a really profound and, frankly, viral narrative titled Hardship and Hope.
The powerful one.
It really is. We are basically breaking down how this one boy's silent struggle in a local classroom accidentally triggered this massive systemic legal reform.
Yeah, and that image of the boy remaining perfectly silent under immense social pressure, it's actually the perfect entry point. Because, our immediate instinct is to misread that behavior entirely.
How so? Like, what do we usually think is happening?
Well, if you are an observer in that classroom, you probably interpret his silence as apathy. You assume he is a truant who has just, checked out of reality.
Right, like he just doesn't care anymore.
Yeah, exactly. But we know from studying developmental psychology that when a child is exhibiting that kind of extreme compartmentalized focus amidst ostracization, we're not looking at apathy.
We aren't.
No, not at all. We're looking at a system operating under maximum cognitive load.
Meaning his brain is essentially redlining just to get through the day.
Yes, exactly.
So, I mean, he just doesn't have the luxury of caring about playground politics because every ounce of his mental bandwidth is dedicated to something much heavier.
Precisely. It's a concept related to allostatic load, which is basically the cumulative burden of chronic stress and life events.
Okay, that begins.
Yeah, when a person, especially a young child, is carrying a massive unseen burden regarding their basic survival, the brain triages its resources.
It shuts down the non-essentials.
Right. Reacting to a classmate's insult or a teacher's scolding, that burns energy he simply cannot afford to waste. That silence is a highly calibrated survival mechanism.
Wow.
It's pure resilience masquerading as indifference.
That is such a profound way to look at it, which brings us to the one person who actually bothers to look past that mask of indifference.
The teacher.
Yes, his teacher. She notices that his isolation feels different from typical misbehavior, so she decides to do some digging.
Because her gut is telling her something else is going on.
Exactly. So she stakes out his route before school, and she watches this 12-year-old kid bypass school entirely, and he walks into a large, wealthy home carrying his school bag.
Just walking right in.
Yeah. And he emerges hours later. His clothes are slightly damp, and he is just sprinting toward the school just to make it.
Which, of course, explains the chronic lateness.
Right. So the teacher is suddenly confronted with a reality that completely shatters her assumptions.
He isn't loitering or slacking off. He is working.
He is working. So she goes to that wealthy house the very next day and confronts the female homeowner.
Do we know what they talked about?
Well, we don't get a literal transcript of their conversation, but the source notes that whatever the homeowner tells the teacher leaves her completely in tears.
It must have been devastating.
Yeah. Overwhelmed, the teacher goes to a friend of hers who works as a journalist to figure out what to do, and the journalist tells her to file an FIR.
A first information report.
Yes, basically an official police complaint to trigger the state machinery.
Ugh.
They are accusing the homeowner of child labor.
Which is a very serious charge.
Very serious. The teacher follows the advice, the police show up, they arrest the homeowner, and the case is fast-tracked to court.
Wow, that escalated incredibly fast.
It did. Okay, let's unpack this. Because firing up the criminal justice system seems like a terrifyingly blunt instrument to use when a child's well-being is on the line.
It's definitely a drastic measure.
I mean, they essentially deployed a legal bulldozer to rescue this kid without actually asking him what he needed.
This raises an important question about how bureaucratic systems are designed to function, particularly when you're dealing with strict liability laws.
Right. The laws are kind of rigid, aren't they?
Extremely. When you create a legal framework to eradicate something terrible like child exploitation, the law has to be written in absolutes.
There's no gray area.
Exactly. The system is programmed to act like an algorithm. If a child is found working, then the employer must be arrested. It is a necessary safeguard, generally speaking.
But an algorithm has no capacity for nuance.
None at all. It cannot process context.
It's just a hammer, and every situation looks like a nail. But by swinging that hammer, the teacher and the journalist risked destroying the boy's only means of survival. They treated the symptom, which was the boy working, while completely ignoring the disease, which is whatever catastrophic poverty forced him into that house in the first place.
And that's the tragedy here. Bureaucracies historically fail at the edge cases because they are built to manage populations, not individuals.
They can't see the specific human being in front of them.
Right. The journalist's advice to file an FIR wasn't about navigating the boy's personal tragedy. It was about forcing the state to acknowledge a violation of its own statutes.
Because an FIR forces an immediate, non-negotiable police response.
Exactly. There is no preliminary investigation into why the law was broken. There's only the assertion that it was broken.
So the teacher and journalist basically trusted a system that only knows how to punish, hoping it would somehow result in a rescue.
Which is a huge, huge gamble.
And that sets up an incredibly tense showdown. We are now in a packed courtroom.
Stakes are as high as they get.
The homeowner is standing before a judge, facing severe punitive action for employing a minor. The judge demands to know what she has to say in her defense.
And this is where the story completely flips.
Yes, because before the woman can speak, the boy, the exact same boy who never says a single word in class, he stands up, he asks to be heard, and he steps right into the witness box.
That takes so much courage.
He looks at the judge and says, "My employer is not at fault. If you want to punish someone, punish me."
It's a total subversion of the narrative.
Yeah.
The supposed victim is shielding the supposed perpetrator.
Exactly. And then he lays out the reality of his life for the whole court. He explains that his father passed away years ago, leaving just him and his mother.
So they were already in a very vulnerable position.
Incredibly vulnerable. His mother used to work at this exact house doing all the chores, which was their absolute only source of income.
Right.
But then, 7 or 8 months prior, she fell severely ill. With her bedridden, they had no money for food, no money to keep him in school, and critically, absolutely no way to pay for her medical treatment.
They were completely out of options.
So out of pure desperation, this young boy went to the homeowner and begged to take over his mother's job.
Now, the source material is very specific about the homeowner's initial reaction, which is a vital detail to analyze.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. The homeowner actually said no at first.
She knew it was illegal.
Yeah, she told him it was wrong for a child to do this kind of labor. But the boy just broke down weeping, explaining that if he didn't work, his mother's medical treatment would stop.
He literally had his mother's life in his hands.
Faced with that, the homeowner took pity on his absolute helplessness. She agreed to let him work, but she only assigned him age-appropriate chores so he could earn the money to keep his mother alive.
That context changes everything.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The boy tells the judge that if this woman goes to jail, he loses his income, his mother dies, and his life is over.
Wow.
The legal villain sitting in handcuffs is actually the only thing keeping his family from drowning.
What's fascinating here is how the boy's testimony forces the court to stare directly at the concept of structural violence.
Structural violence. Can you explain that a bit?
Sure. Structural violence occurs when social structures or institutions harm people by preventing them from meeting your basic needs.
Ah, I see.
In a society without an adequate safety net without guaranteed health care for a severely ill widow, the boy and his mother were pushed to the absolute margins of existence.
So the system itself was failing them before the law ever got involved.
Exactly. The strict application of the child labor law here wasn't protecting him. It was actively threatening his life.
It was going to be the thing that destroyed his family.
Right. The courtroom is forced to realize that what the penal code defines as exploitation was, in this hyper-specific context, a profound act of grace.
It really makes you rethink the entire concept of criminal justice. I mean,
Right.
we usually assume people break the law because they have malicious intent.
Mostly, yeah.
But this testimony exposes the dark gray area of survival crimes. The boy and the homeowner were participating in an illegal arrangement solely because the legal, sanctioned avenues for survival simply did not exist for them.
That is the paradox that leaves the entire courtroom, including the judge, in tears.
Everybody was crying.
The judge realizes that applying the law as written would be a massive miscarriage of actual justice. This is a moment where the rigid bureaucracy is short-circuited by an undeniable human reality.
And the judge's response is unprecedented. He doesn't just dismiss the case. He actively intervenes in the boy's life.
He steps outside of his typical judicial role.
Way outside. He issues an order mandating immediate state-sponsored medical treatment for the mother. He ensures the boy's education will continue without any financial interruption.
Which is incredible.
And then he formally thanks the homeowner for stepping in to help a destitute family when society had completely abandoned them. He acquits her with full honor.
So he resolves the micro-crisis perfectly. The immediate danger to this specific family is neutralized.
Yep, the family is safe.
But the story doesn't end with a localized happy ending, does it?
No, not at all. It blows up into a national reckoning. The judge takes all of the emotional momentum of this case and directs it straight at the government.
Using his platform.
Exactly. He issues a formal recommendation demanding the enactment of laws that guarantee free medical treatment and free education for the impoverished.
That's a huge leap from a single child labor case.
Massive. And because the courtroom drama was so intense, the story leaks to the press. It goes completely viral across television and newspapers. NGOs and wealthy donors just flood the zone to help.
The public pressure must have been immense.
It was. And eventually, the government folds under the public pressure and actually passes the law. But the source material drops a major reveal here.
Oh, right, regarding the teacher and the journalists.
Yes. It claims the teacher and the journalist orchestrated this exact outcome. Their goal wasn't just to save this one boy. They wanted to use his situation to secure justice for everyone suffering in poverty.
It was a calculated move.
Did they really know that pushing this kid into a high-stakes courtroom was the exact lever they needed to force the government's hand?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it illustrates a fundamental rule of political science and sociology.
Which is?
Systemic change is rarely driven by statistics alone. You can show a government a spreadsheet detailing the mortality rates of impoverished widows, and nothing will happen.
Right, because it's just numbers on a page.
Exactly. Bureaucracies easily ignore abstract data. To move a rigid system, you need to generate immense political capital.
And how do you do that?
The only reliable way to generate that capital is by introducing a highly visible, compelling human anomaly that the public simply cannot ignore.
They needed a face.
They needed a narrative that bypassed logic and went straight to empathy. Whether it was a calculated masterstroke or an instinctual gamble by the journalist, weaponizing the FIR process forced a public collision.
That makes total sense. Bringing a child in unwashed clothes to beg a judge for his mother's life in open court, that cuts through all political rhetoric.
It puts the concept of poverty itself on trial.
They used the strict machinery of the law to highlight the absolute absurdity of the state's missing safety nets.
But it was an incredible gamble, as you said earlier.
Oh, absolutely. If they had drawn a judge who was a strict textualist, someone who only cared about the letter of the law and ignored the context, that homeowner would be in prison right now.
And the boy's mother likely would have died.
It really highlights how fragile our reliance on the system is, doesn't it? And how massive macro-level societal shifts almost always require someone enduring a micro-level tragedy on a public stage.
The irony is that the boy was seeking invisibility to survive. But it was only his radical visibility in that courtroom that saved him, and subsequently, countless others.
Which perfectly transitions us back to where this whole thing started, the classroom.
The everyday reality.
Yeah. The national laws are passed, the bureaucracy has shifted, but the story grounds us back in the day-to-day reality of this 12-year-old kid. He returns to school, but everything has changed.
How so?
Well, his clothes are clean. He is arriving on time. He is actually carrying his own lunchbox, which is packed by a mother who is finally receiving proper medical care and recovering.
That must feel like a completely different world for him.
And the social dynamics of the room have completely inverted. The exact same classmates who shunned him and mocked his odor are now actively saving him a seat.
Because his suffering has been resolved, and therefore he is allowed back into the social fold.
Exactly. And the teacher stands in front of the class and delivers a concluding lesson. She says, "Do not judge a person's value by their poverty. Sometimes the biggest struggle is fought by the one who remains the most silent."
That's powerful.
I've been trying to find the right way to visualize this for you, the listener. It's a lot like looking at a building and noticing a cracked, ugly pillar.
Okay, I like this analogy.
The classmates saw the lateness, the dirty clothes, the smell. They just saw the cracks in the paint. They judged the boy for being an ugly pillar. What they couldn't see was that this single fragile structure was acting as a load-bearing column for an entire collapsing roof.
The mother's illness, the poverty, the threat of starvation.
Exactly. If you don't know how much weight something is holding up, you have absolutely no right to judge the cracks.
That architectural analogy is much more precise than just saying people have hidden depths. It speaks directly to the mechanics of human judgment.
How you mean?
Well, the classmates judged the structural integrity of the boy without understanding the environmental physics acting upon him. And that reveals a rather uncomfortable truth about how we process empathy.
An uncomfortable truth.
Yeah. We tend to operate with reactive empathy rather than proactive empathy.
Break down the difference between the two for us.
Look at the timeline of the classmates' compassion. They didn't offer him a seat when he was dirty and struggling. They only extended their empathy after his story was validated by a judge,
I see.
after it was in the newspapers,
Mhm.
and crucially, after he showed up clean and socially acceptable.
So they needed permission to care.
Precisely. As humans, we often subconsciously require suffering to be legitimized by an authority figure before we feel comfortable engaging with it. We want our empathy to be safe and clean.
That is so true. We wait for someone else to tell us it's okay to feel bad for them.
The teacher's final lesson is a demand for proactive empathy. It's the willingness to assume that the cracks in the pillar are caused by a heavy load, rather than just poor character, even when no one is around to explain the context to you.
What does this all mean? We started this deep dive looking at a child isolated under a tree, seemingly apathetic to the world. And we mapped how unraveling his specific silence led to a national mandate for healthcare and education.
It is an incredible testament to the ripple effects of simply paying attention.
It really is. But if we pull this narrative out of the courtroom and drop it into your daily life, the implications are profound. It means that the colleague who is constantly dropping the ball on projects, the stranger who seems unnecessarily hostile on your commute, or a friend who is suddenly withdrawn, they might be operating under a massive allostatic load of their own.
They're carrying that unseen weight.
Yeah, you are only seeing the cracks in the paint, completely unaware of the ceiling they're trying to hold up.
And that leads to a critical realization for us to walk away with today.
Yeah.
This specific story concluded with a cinematic fix. A perceptive teacher investigated, an empathetic judge circumvented a rigid law, and the government actually responded.
Which is pretty rare.
Very rare. The real world rarely aligns that perfectly.
Yeah.
So the question I want to leave you with to mull over today is this. How many other silent struggles around you right now are being misjudged as incompetence, laziness, or aloofness simply because no one has bothered to ask what load they are bearing?
That's a heavy question.
It is. And more importantly, what rigid, well-intentioned rules in your own workplace or community might be unknowingly punishing the most vulnerable people right under your nose?